Well, hello everybody. It's my last night. I'm going back to Edmonton for 6 days off. My daughter's grads. It's going to be fantastic. I'm excited about that. Then I'll come back for a few weeks and finish the shutdown. What I want to talk about tonight, as we go through elections and we deal with Liberals, Conservatives, NDP, People's Party of Canada, Green Party, and we can go on and on through all the Crown parties. Not only the parties federally, we can do so through every province. And we can talk about three items that equal the Canadian subjects and define savages, the First Peoples, public debt. What you need to know, how we're going to compare that to the United States of America today. Today, and what it means for all Canadians. And folks, a lot of people don't understand the concepts of public debt. You see what they want you to see. Governments will say, hey, look at our debt to GDP ratio. We're doing fantastic. However, just because a government's debt to GDP ratio is less than the GDP doesn't mean that you, the people, aren't in serious trouble. Now, Joe Biden's America today, they're having a massive squabble. The House Republicans are saying, no, Joe Biden, your radical reforms, your wants and needs financially exceed the government debt to GDP ratio. And folks, they do. Data comes in every quarter. We can look at year over year. Pandemic's been over for a year. Officially, as you all know, things opened up in the United States. You're welcome to travel to the US. No vaccines. COVID is a thing of the past, at least in the Western Hemisphere. But how did we all do during COVID? How did governments do? Where are we at now? Now, we have G7 numbers. We have them. We can see which countries are terrible today. UK, Germany, terrible across all economic markers and boards. They're doing terribly. Their GDP is way, way down. In fact, if you went by a marker of being a G7 member, UK and Germany would be gone. They'd be gone. But now let's look at Canada, who seemingly has a good government debt to GDP ratio. It's only 73%. Folks, we only grew 24% through the Trudeau reign of terror. Apparently, that's not a bad thing when we look at the rest of the G7. Trudeau apparently did good. Joe Biden, excuse me, is at 123%. 123% government debt to GDP ratio. When we say that, we're talking about federal debt, how much the federal government burns. Trudeau burned more money and created more debt for the government, federal government, than any prime minister ever in the history of Canada before him. He's the worst. 24% increase. Now, folks, before you all say, well, it's not that bad. It's only 73%. And look at dirty old Joe Biden. He's the worst by a long, long mile. Here's the problem, folks. Debts from federal government, provincial governments, i.e. the 50 states, and then all the municipalities inside the 50 states are not measured with the federal debt to GDP ratio, meaning when you add up all those, guess what happens to Canada? We sail past way over 100% debt to GDP ratio. In fact, we're sitting, folks, at 103.5% against Joe Biden's closer to 130% with all 50 state debts. Still sounds bad, right? It still sounds bad. Let's go into the next markers. What nobody likes to talk about. Corporate debt. Corporate debt to GDP ratio. This is where everything changes in relation to the United States of America and Canada. Corporate debt in the United States of America to GDP is down at 62%, folks. Do you know what Canadian corporate debt to GDP is? 160%. Is that all the debt that is responsible to you, the subjects, and you, the defined savages? Constitutionally defined subjects and savages. No, you have the public debt, and the public debt can be measured to GDP. There's household debt. Here again, this is your average family in Canada. Your debt to GDP ratio, which I predicted more than 6 months ago, you will find lives where I clearly articulate that we are going to shoot past another 24% and we will be sitting at nearly 110% debt to GDP ratio. In fact, I went on to say 24% of mortgage holders are not going to be able to renew their mortgages this time around. And on average, most Canadians have to renew their mortgages, meaning new financing, new interest rate, every 1, 3, or 5 year period. And of course, the financially less secure you are, the faster your renewal dates come. Now, most Canadians sit in 5-year renewal dates. 24% of those mortgages today at these interest rates will be cashed in. We're at 107 debt to GDP ratio percentage, meaning the average household is more in debt than what the country can produce. That is a bad marker. It's the worst in all of the G7, including Germany and UK, who are in net negative GDP growth. In fact, they're not even ranking as a G7 member this year. However, the households inside, all the families, all the subjects of UK and the citizens of Germany are not in any more debt than what the contraction of the economy has occurred. And more, the households haven't taken on more debt than the GDP can sustain, meaning they're not going tits up. You know who is going tits up in all of the G7? Not your government, not your crown colonial politicians, none of them elected from any party, none of their closest friends in the first class, which is all service sector corporations. No, they're going to do fine, even though their productivity is the lowest in Canadian history. That's a fact. It's one of the lowest production markers in all of the G7. And more, they're the lowest in all of the G20. Lowest production scores. Terrible service sector business models. Terrible. How can they float? Because you are debt servicing them. The government's borrowing against you. That is that 24% increase during the Trudeau reign of terror. If you think this was new, it's not. We can go back in the Harper years. It's the exact same thing. He even had a financial bailout for the service sector, monumental, largest in history. He outdid every prime minister ever before him. That is until Justin Trudeau came along. He doubled down on Harper. But folks, you weren't in an over debt to GDP ratio in your household debt. You weren't. You are now. And that means unless something dramatically changes, Canadians are going to continually become renters. You're going to lose property, and more of the wealthy elite, the 0.01%, are going to buy up all your homes, knock them down, build high-rises and multi-family single-unit dwellings that you can all rent. Now, yes, those over the age of 42 on average are going to make it through this. But anybody under that age category, you are subject to losing it all. If you don't have a stable job and a stable, at least matching inflationary wages, you're going to be toast by 2050. That's a fact. That's a fact. If you do own your house outright, you may be able to survive it, but you're going to have to make serious cuts in your living conditions. Your cost of living is going to continually grow. Politicians, left or right, are going to be increasing energy costs. Now, they can do this directly with taxes, which you see on the left, or they can do it with fees, which you see on the right. Either way, they are taxing you. They are taxing you. Right now in Alberta, we're watching Rachel Notley and Danielle Smith promise different forms of taxation and different forms of tax cuts. Well, folks, at 160% corporate debt to GDP ratio, after monumental corporate tax cuts, and we're doing worse than ever in our corporate sphere. In fact, Canada-wide, there's no major investments coming into Canada. Our private sectors have not grown. They keep bragging about the service sector GDP. Where's the money coming for the service sector GDP? Well, it's you, the subjects and defined savages, because the resources harvested have been locked out. We're not making any more. We're not growing any of those industries. There's batteries and lithium, and there's plants proposed. There's one in Ontario. Other than that, it's all foreign-owned, foreign farmed at 90%, and those are going somewhere else to be built, and you are all going to buy the final product. There's no Green New Deal for any of you. In fact, we're going to attempt to increase that Germany and Britain, UK GDP by refining our resources and selling them overseas at great discounts. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're not even going to ship it. They're going to, and we're gonna pay at a great discount to see that done. This is the Liberals. It's always been the Conservatives. It was always the Liberals. It's right now BC NDP. Green supports it. And of course, Maxime Bernier supports even doing more. They all tell you it's all for your benefit, but the debt to GDP ratios for domestic corporates, especially private sector, service sector, is explosively high. Highest we've ever had. Household debt is the highest we've ever had. Excuse me. Our public debt to GDP ratio is not sustainable. Anyone telling you it's sustainable is a liar. Now we can look at USA, their government's out of control. The federal government's being reined in by the House. The Congress says, no, you've exceeded the normal operating government debt to GDP ratio. It's way over the household debts, the corporate debts, the state debts by a large, large margin, and almost all of the average of municipalities. Now, there are some large ones. We can look at California, we can look at New York, that do go over and above. And of course, same thing as Canada, the municipalities are under state largely. And we're seeing Canada's municipalities do the same thing under provincial deficits and sponsored in federal deficits. They fight for votes. They buy votes with the people's money. And if the people don't have the money, don't worry. We'll borrow against you and your children. We'll keep growing the government debt, the whole of the public debt. We'll keep changing the rules so corporations who are not viable can keep borrowing. And don't worry, when they go bankrupt, it just slaps on to the public debt. Don't worry, the government will bail you out. We'll just grow the debt to GDP ratio. For anyone claiming that the Conservatives wouldn't do that, Stephen Harper borrowed the most on behalf of corporate elites, foreigners, foreign corporates, more than any and all prime ministers put together combined ever before him since the dawn of Canada. Trudeau did the same thing in COVID, doubled Stephen Harper. What is the next prime minister going to do? Because the household debt crisis is real. It's here. I told you all 6 months ago. I nailed it within 3 percentage points. That's economics. That's an economics graduate. I'm not alone. There was 18% of us globally who could see this coming. We talked about it. Just a few weeks ago, that number's risen to 60. And now today, even the UK says, whoa, Canada, you're out of control. This is an implosion ready to happen, and it's at the level of the family unit. That is chaos for society. The corporate debt to GDP is chaos for society. That's the kind of debt where mass businesses go belly up. They go belly up. They're barely making it. And we've had the best corporate reductions ever seen, and things went even worse. We could say COVID's over. None of that's slowing down. We reduced corporate taxes, gave people more breaks, and they're going down the toilet. Why is that? Look at your service sector to private sector percentages. It's been a line like this, service sector, and a line like this for private sector. At one time, they were almost 50-50 in this country. Then it was 60-40. Then it slid up to 70-30. Then it was 80-20. Now we're at, what, almost 90-10? 90-10? How is this country going to operate? We're not expanding any of our manufacturing. We're not expanding any of our resource capabilities. We can't even get monumental amount of resources to Tidewater. Everybody says that's a bad idea. Canadians, we can't continue like this. There is a solution, a simple solution. It's called remove the Crown land from the Crown governments, both federally and provincially. You run constitutional conventions. You take the $26 trillion in value and wealth locked into this country. You split it with the First Peoples and Canadians. 50-50. You give First Peoples self-government, self-determination. You settle the claims that way. You can't restore their whole country. You never will. But you can do half of what they called Turtle Island. The rest of Canadians can take the other half and expand. We can work together, nation within a nation. Anyone who says this isn't monumental, it's not groundbreaking or earth-shattering or economically explosively changing for not only all Canadians, but the corporate debt to GDP ratio would tumble. the household debt to GDP ratio would tumble. We're not talking about taking away any property that's already been determined and sent out and amalgamated by whomever, wherever. We're talking about the other 90%. That's what we're talking about. The crown lands, federally and provincially. A mass amount of wealth, if constituted properly, gives every Canadian tremendous wealth. It opens up the world to finance to all of you, to explore your hopes, aspirations, dreams. We codify a constitution, how that works, all resources above and below ground, all environmentalism together, all the people, every man and woman over the age of 18 in every language available in Canada. 215 minus Russia have to get a permit from the federal government, have to win Pierre Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh, and Justin Trudeau. And they're not having it. They say, no Russian Canadians, no Russian language here. You have to disclose everything you're working on. Well, we're not going to give you our platform, and it's for the people, by the people, not by politicians. I won't be writing the Constitution. None of the people in our party will. We're going to take you on that journey to how to get it done. And if people think this is radical or not possible, I'm going to show you the United States of America. Settled 94.5% of the country, available to all Americans and American Indians. Done, signed, sealed, certified. There's still very few outstanding issues, not a whole lot. Can be done, has been done. And for people who don't know the United States of America, and this $30 trillion debt everybody's looking at, when you take all of their assets, their liabilities, that are owed to them, and assets, equity held throughout the world, it's zero. They zero balance. Now, Canada can't boast the same. Those government debts, those corporate debts, those household debts belong to the subjects and savages defined in Canada. It's over $2.5 trillion for only 40 million people. Do the math. You're right there with America, except for you don't have a vast infrastructure all over the world. You don't have major institutions like World Bank, World Financial, the IMF, the World Trade Organization. You don't have all that. World Health, massive UN, massive military forces, infrastructure all over the world. If USA sells out everything tomorrow to cash in, their debt's zero. They're not a stupid country. They were never designed stupidly, and they don't operate stupidly. Joe Biden is pushing his limits. He's being reined in by the House. But again, what they borrow is what they have out in the world. That's not remotely even close to what Canada is operating with. It's all on all of you. And again, if you haven't seen the numbers, like I predicted 6 months ago, signed, sealed, certified more than 3 months ago, it's come to pass. And even the UK BBC News published those numbers. Anyone can get them anyway. It's out there in World Economics, analyzed every UN state. That is Canada. That is your household debt. Massive. It spells disaster for the next renewal of mortgages. 24% of mortgages outstanding. Most of those Canadians in that 24% will not be able to renew their mortgages. It's terrible. It's destructive. It's a mass amount of debt hiked onto the public. You can vote in Pierre Poilievre. You can re-vote in Trudeau. You could roll the dice on Singh. You can go with Elizabeth May, Green New Deal, and all of her radical communist, colonialist, green power to the pristine elite. You can go Maxime Bernier and his radicalism and his, I'm going to destroy globalism except for I'm in love with the crown. I'm going to keep the crown and we're going to go forward. I'm trustable even though nothing I ever did in my political career, this is Maxime Bernier, nothing he ever voted for or did is remotely close to anything he tells everybody he will do. Like all of them, they lie, cheat, and steal. They just want the crown. They don't care. They're getting rich, but you're all going down the toilet. And if you're not going down the toilet, your children are, or your grandchildren. A lot of folks over the age of 50 doing extremely well. Nothing to worry about. Oh, that's all great. But how are all your children? More importantly, if we took your estate, divided it with all your grandchildren, are they set up? Are they as well as you, or even remotely close? Can they get set up? I know for a province like Ontario, who's just their debt to GDP ratio, 38%, people are clapping. We love Doug Ford. They've never been so badly in debt to GDP ratio as they are today. It grew. Sorry, no one likes to talk about that. But it's conservative, right? The word PC, it's conservative. It's gotta be financially responsible, right? No, not even close. It's the second worst province in all of Canada. Go look at it. Growing astronomically. But don't worry, it's conservative, right? Just like Harper. Hey, don't worry, it's conservative, right? Hey, no, it was way better. Oh, don't worry about it. We all feel the effects of radical borrowing, radical debts. We see it in our services. Again, I'm going to tell everybody, go look at the G20. We have the lowest service sector productivity of all of the G20. There's something very wrong with how Canada's operating. What is it? It's the government subsidizing failures, extreme failures. It's all a lie, and you're going to pay for it. That's my video. Share, share, share. Get it out there. Bye now.